Hey everyone, welcome back to TV Guys. And you know what I can't figure out? Sweatpants. You know the message you're sending out to the world with sweatpants? You're telling the world, I give up. I can't compete in normal society. I'm miserable, so I might as well be comfortable. And you don't know if that was me or Jerry. I'm Matt.
I'm Brian. I was going to say that same thing.
And let's get it out of the way first. I mean, we're going to talk about Seinfeld. His actual stand-up comedy, I've never found all that funny. I rarely laugh. I'm sorry. I don't know if I'm the only one.
It's not a show. It's like there are some funny moments. Oh, that's funny. Like you make it a chuckle. I would not find it interesting to watch like an hour-long set of Seinfeld.
Yeah, I actually read one of his books and read about 30 pages of it. And it's all kind of like one-liner type stuff like that. It's broken into these just little small brackets. And I'm like, I don't know if I laughed once while I was reading that.
Well, and like the fact that they're all like one-liners also lends to the episodic nature of Seinfeld. So it's like you take a tiny little 30-second bit, make an episode about that. It's kind of what the deal is.
Yeah, except for somehow with Seinfeld, it works pretty well. Now, I know there are some who they just love the TV show, and there are some who are like, this is the dumbest thing in the world. I'm kind of in between. There's some episodes that are great, and some that I'm like, okay, I can get why this isn't everyone's favorite brand of coffee, so to speak.
Yeah. So, Matt, don't worry. I'm not going to say that I've never seen Seinfeld. But remember a couple episodes ago, we talked about House, and I admitted on the podcast that I've never seen House before.
Yep.
I've seen a little Seinfeld. It's one of those shows that like, oh, I'm scrolling at a hotel. It's on. I'll watch it. And so I was always aware of like the big, like the things that everyone talks about, Soup Nazi and, all this kind of stuff. So in the past week, I've looked up some lists and I watched probably like maybe 10 to 15 episodes on like what do people say are the best episodes. So I kind of got a better feel for it now. But I am definitely not as much of an expert on this as I am like Friends, which I know to some people is blasphemy. But yeah. But I definitely don't know the show as well.
But that's kind of why we're talking about this, is because no matter how you feel about this show, it definitely is influential. There's no doubt that it has made a huge impact on comedies and just especially we'll get into it. So the whole crux of comedy and the history of comedy actually shifted a little bit in the 1900s. So before we get into the history of Seinfeld and what makes it special, we kind of have to back up, because back in the 50s, have you ever seen Brian, the Marvelous Miss Maisel?
No, but I've heard it's good.
They do a really good job of representing what the type of comedy was at that time. Not with Miss Maisel, because Miss Maisel is more like the observational comedy, and so she is that like redefined comedy. If she was actually a real person, she would 100% be like historic for the way that she did comedy, because at the time in the 50s and before that, stand-up comedy was pretty much, let me get up on stage and tell a series of jokes with punchlines. And so like you'd have to have these really good jokes, or like you'd have to have these bits where like the take my wife please, like that sort of guy was like, it always ends with the one line or something like that. So in the 50s, late in the 50s, there was the advent of observational comedy. And so actually that didn't start because Jerry Seinfeld isn't that old. It didn't start with him. One of the biggest playmakers of observational comedy was Shelley Berman, who in the late 50s. If that name sounds familiar, like he's been doing comedy since then. He actually was able to have a guest role on Curb Your Enthusiasm. He played Larry David's dad. So essentially the father of observational comedy ends up being on Larry David's show with him. But so he comes along and he starts like noticing the things around us and drawing attention to them and delivering them in a comedic way. And it was something brand new. Audience hadn't seen anything like that before, but still it was still early and it was still new. So it wasn't like a mainstream thing. And so it gets to the 70s, and the 70s is when we start to see a little bit more of that. So like David Brenner shows up. David Brenner, he has the record, or at the time in the 70s and 80s, he was Johnny Carson's most frequent comedic guest, and so they'd constantly have Brenner on, and he'd do this observational comedy, and I'm sure that really influenced Jerry, because Jerry started his stuff shortly after that, like late or into the 80s, and I'm sorry, the bridge between those two was someone that I know you've heard of, George Carlin. We've talked about.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So George Carlin, if you're like, oh, I can think of George Carlin's stuff, he kind of got a little bit more nihilistic in the 80s as time went on, and a lot more, cynical and grumpy, and that worked for his comedic act, and that's completely fine. But he started off a lot more just observational before he gave it kind of the bite that he gave it with political commentary and, the
George Carlin is kind of like the predecessor to Lewis Black a little bit.
Definitely. He did morph his comedy style into that a lot more in the 80s.
Yeah.
And we talked about Carlin back when we did another one of these segments, because we've done our most influential TV shows, and we talked about Saturday Night Live. And guess who was the first host of Saturday Night Live? George Carlin.
I thought it was Peter Boyle.
No, Carlin was the first.
Carlin was first, yeah. Peter Boyle was early, but Carlin was first.
Yep. And so, and Carlin did not understand what they're going for with Saturday Night Live. He said, what is this show?
Well, I don't think Saturday Night Live knew what they were going for with Saturday Night Live at the beginning.
That's completely fair. And so, George Carlin had an irreverent take on the observational comedy, and like I said, it got more nihilistic and a lot more bite as he went on. But the 70s, it was just, still kind of getting his feet wet. And that's who influenced, I feel like, Jerry the most. Because he started seeing what Brenner was doing, he started seeing what Carlin was doing, and so when he comes on the scene in the late 70s, he starts like doing the same sort of thing, but he does it in a very different way. He does it in a very like down to earth sort of way, and he talks about the mundane, and his observational comedy is stuff that are just like this is the most boring stuff in the world. This is the most like blue collar, just it was very relatable because of how mundane it was. And so he didn't really explode onto the scene too much in the 70s and early 80s. He had he was able to make it on the Rodney Dangerfield special that he had. He was able to have his own HBO special in 1987, but he met Larry David at the end of the 70s, and the two met through Carol Leifer, because she was booked to do like her friend's birthday party. And so Larry David wrote all these jokes for Carol to perform at a friend's birthday party, and she just shows up to it plastered. And so she's like, I can't do this. I can't go on. I don't know how she knew Jerry, but Jerry was there. They ran in the same circles in like in New York City comic clubs, like at the Catch a Rising Star Club. And so he's there, and she's like, hey, this guy wrote these jokes for me. I'm not doing this. Can you just deliver these? And he did a great job. And so Larry and Jerry together, they come on, they start this friendship. They run in the same circles. They appreciate each other's comedic stylings and what the other one brings. And 10 years later, after they meet in the late 80s, that's when they have their idea for this situational, mundane TV show. I know we call it the show about nothing, but that wasn't the original pitch. That only came in the meta commentary when they actually do their own show about nothing on Seinfeld.
Yeah. So if I make my own observation, this will tie in. You remember that episode of Parks and Rec where the guy who's obsessed with Twilight, and he's like, I will tell you all about Twilight. He's like, in the 1970 whatever, Stephanie Meyer was born, and she's like, oh, you're going back to his birth. That's kind of like today. You're like, we're talking about Seinfeld. So in the 50s.
Well, that's, if we're talking about how influential this show is, we have to understand how comedy has shifted.
Oh, yeah, I'm
Jerry is
not
a big
it.
part of that.
And it's an interesting thing. You definitely did way more preparation than I did for this, and it is cool to see how it progresses. It just that was the thought that went into my head.
Yeah.
So
fine, make fun of it, Brian. It's like I'm at front of the classroom giving like a presentation. You're in the back like, nerd.
Exactly. I saw a video about the beginning of Seinfeld. And in that one, they said that the jumping off point was an appearance that Seinfeld had on Johnny Carson. Are you coming up to that, or is that?
Yeah, I had that written somewhere. Oh yeah, in 1981.
Yeah.
That was when he really got into the bigger mainstream. Because you go on Johnny Carson, you suddenly people are paying attention to you. You know.
Well, if what I've heard, I don't know the details, but like there was like some signal or something that if Johnny Carson gave you that like the thumbs up or whatever the signal was, it meant like you're in. He liked you. You're coming back. And if you didn't get that, it meant like okay, you're done. We're not going to have you back. And he got the approval, the thumbs up. I think it was more subtle than a thumbs up, but whatever it was from Johnny saying like you're in.
Yeah, and I think that's what allowed him to he like put him on the Rodney Dangerfield special. That he was like, this guy has got something, and
Yeah.
Carson recognized that. He definitely liked him a lot.
Mm.
And so so after those years of the David and Jerry connection, as they were putting this together, because Jerry had his HBO special the year before they start pitching Seinfeld. And so they come up with this idea. Let's do this mundane show, this very postmodern type show. We hadn't had a postmodern type show, like a true one, since, say, Monty Python's Flying Circus. And that was in 1969. So even though this show was relatable and mundane and everything, it still had that absurdity of a postmodern, like, everything can be questioned. Everything, like, why do we do these things? Why do we accept this stuff as normal, and just kind of shining this light? And I think that's where Seinfeld really, it's not just about the, hey, we're doing our laundry here at the laundromat. It's like, here is why do we do the things we do with our laundry? Why do we overwash our laundry? Or you can't, why do we worry about over drying our laundry? You can't overwash your laundry. So what are we worried about with over drying? And just like really dry, like, oh yeah, that is stupid. Why do I do that?
Yeah. No, I get that. It shines a light on, like I said, the everyday stuff that we can all relate to, while also going extreme. Because I feel like Jerry and Elaine to a certain extent are like the straight men, and you have in different directions George and Kramer being the like, what is this guy talking about kind of thing. On the surface, you might think that it's just Kramer, but after watching some episodes, George is insane as well.
Which is really funny because those are the two characters that are actually based on real people.
Yeah, I knew that. I knew that about George. I knew George was based on Larry David. I just found out that there was a real Kramer.
Yep. So Kenny Kramer was Larry David's real next door neighbor. And so in the very first episode, we actually used this as a trivia a long time ago, talking about Kramer, that they call him Kessler. And the reason why is because they were a little worried, like, we're being so obvious about putting, like, we're basing it on this real guy. I don't want to get sued, so we're going to call him Kessler for this first one. And then Larry talked with Kenny Kramer and was like, yeah, hey, we base his character on you. Can we do that? There's a rumor that I didn't see this substantiated, but it sounded like he was only paid like a couple $1,000s for using his likeness for the entire show run. But that he's not so mad about it because he's got a lot of mileage out of being Kenny Kramer. And so, he's not complaining about it. So he agreed to use the likeness. So that's why only one episode you get Kessler. But yeah, and then you had Larry David, a.k.a. George Costanza.
Yeah.
Which I don't remember what this story was. I don't remember who was saying that. I want to say it was some sort of producer. But someone's looking at this script, seeing the things that George Costanza is saying, and they say this to Larry. They're like, why would no human being would respond this way to what's going on? This guy is way too ridiculous. And Larry David's like, that's exactly how I would respond. Like, that's me. That's what I'm doing. So yes, people would respond this way.
I know what you're talking about. No, that was actually Jason Alexander. I saw an interview. Jason Alexander was saying that. He read a script like, no one would be in this situation. Like you said, no one would respond this way. And then when Larry David said that, he said, oh, I'm playing Larry. And he said in that interview, he said, at that point, I realized, okay, now I understand and I can go on with this.
So, exactly. So they base it on those two characters. They round it out. Obviously, they have Jerry, and I think they're like, we need a woman. Let's get Elaine. I don't know much of the backstory about where they came up with Elaine, so I can't give you that. I'm sorry. I tried to research as much as possible, but there's still cracks in my armor here.
Yeah.
So they come up with this pilot, and they pitch it, and they show it to the higher ups, and those higher ups show up to focus groups, and everyone hates it. They have no idea what this is. They call it also, it's the Seinfeld Chronicles. It's not Seinfeld. It's the Seinfeld Chronicles. And that only lasted for one episode because there's another show called the Marshall Chronicles. And like, we don't want them to get confused. So we're just going to shorten it to Seinfeld. But they air the Seinfeld Chronicles for all these people. And they're like, we just don't get it. There's no reason that people would be so excited about or excitable about the laundromat. This doesn't make sense. It's too relatable. It's too mundane, whatever. And so they are like, well, we don't know if we're going to do this. But somehow, I don't know what the logic is, because it's such a rarity that this show even made it. To have those reactions that it had, for it to see the light of day, it still gets a pilot on TV, and there is a much higher rating once the pilot hit TV. And people are like, oh, actually, there's something to this. And so the higher-ups are like, well, okay, well, let's order more episodes. They order the smallest amount of episodes that has ever been ordered for a TV show. This is back in the 90s. So back in the 90s, they would do like 24 episodes per season because guess what? They had programming blocks to fill. And if they didn't do a full season, they would maybe do a half season, 12 or 13 episodes. But it's easier to plan for a whole block than for... Yeah.
From listening to some of these rewatch podcasts of the cast of the 90s, what was common was they would start with your 13, and then if the show was going good, they picked up what they call the back 9, and then you would get the full season. So most of these shows started with at least like a 13-episode season, and then they kept going once they were, oh, this is good.
Yeah, and if it wasn't good, then they just fill out the spring schedule with either another one of these type shows or some sort of syndication.
Yeah.
So they would usually do what you said, 13, maybe 9. They ordered 4 more episodes for a total of 5. And the Castle Rock was like, the production company was like, what? That's not normal. That's not what you normally do for a show like this. We've got this star comedian. We're going to shop it around. No one wanted this show. The fact that it's still like is as lasting as it was is crazy, because they're like, all right, we come back to Fox. We'll have to take it. We'll have to take your 5-episode first season, whatever. And they did it. And still it made waves 9 seasons in.
And there's a lot of shows like this, like that started out. It's crazy to think of how many shows that are so well known and long lasting just almost didn't make it, or were horrible ratings in the beginning. I'm thinking, The Office, Cheers, all of them were like almost on the bubble of being canceled in the beginning.
Yeah, and plenty of shows that were on that bubble, like they were just holding on every single season. Like, we liked Chuck, and every single season, it always felt like Chuck was like one bad week away from getting canceled.
Yeah. Well, then Subway saved it, and they kept going for a couple more seasons.
With their delicious Subway sandwiches for $5 footlongs. Gosh, like the blatant product placement was so obvious. But I mean, like, hey, if that keeps it on the air, whatever.
Exactly. We all knew what the deal was.
But Larry David, I mean, he walks away from the pilot and he's like, I'm not seeing these guys again. This show's doomed. No one's gonna get it. No one's gonna. It's such a niche sort of humor, because like, it's not the family friendly. His whole idea, he laid down the law in that first pilot. He's like, we've got to have characters that the rule was no hugging, no learning, meaning like it doesn't end with this nice bow on its head. The characters are not allowed to mature emotionally. They're not allowed to grow. And that's where some of the influence comes in. We have a lot of shows like that now. Plenty of shows have followed that model, but Seinfeld was the one that was the groundbreaker for it. And so that was off-putting to people because they liked some of that saccharine sometimes. They liked seeing like they'd make fun of the dad. They'd watch Tim Allen get blown up by his own creations on Home Improvement, and they'd be like, "This is great," but there's still family values in it. But then you go over to Seinfeld, like, these are awful people.
Yeah.
They're so terrible, but we love it.
Yeah. Tim was crazy, but Tim had Wilson feeding him the moral. He had Jill being like, "Hey, we're a family." He had the kids. He even had Al being a more, like, everyone was a moral compass around Tim in that show. Very different show.
And he made mistakes, but he'd learn from them at the end of the episode, even though he wouldn't then retain that as character growth going forward.
Yeah. With Seinfeld, it was never really, he said, it was never really character development. There were moments when it's like, oh, I tried that. Now I know that doesn't work. For like I did this and it pissed off my girlfriend. Okay, I won't do that again. But it's not like I'm changing as a person or learning morals. It's all like,
Yeah. I know that. So I looked up some of this stuff too, and I don't have it in my notes of if it started off this way. Eventually, Seinfeld was moved to compete because it was competing with Home Improvement on Wednesday nights, and that was just why that was in my head, is that show. Yeah. And it moved to follow Cheers as part of that Thursday night primetime block that Fox had. But do you know, did it start off following Cheers? Because I thought that was what helped give it good ratings in the early season, and then they moved it off of the Thursday night and then put it back.
I don't know offhand because it started in '89, so Cheers would have already been a big hit at that point. Cheers would have been in like season 5 or 6 at that point. I don't know. Let me see if I could find it.
And so while you're looking that up, I just want to correct myself because I've said Fox like 3 different times, and I know it's NBC. But my first exposure to Seinfeld was in syndication on Fox. And so I've said Fox like 10 different times. I'm sorry. It's NBC. I'm surprised you didn't correct me. But anyone out there is like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I do know what I'm talking about. I'm just stupid sometimes. So there you go.
Yeah.
But as we said last week, I am never wrong. You guys were wrong. Your ears did not hear correctly. So get those together.
I can't find what it was following.
Well, it for sure followed it as of the 5th season, but okay. I think it started off following it too. But that doesn't matter as much because the first and second season they kind of had similar numbers, and then third season comes along, and that has some similar numbers too. But third season also came with Emmy recognition, and so critics started picking up that, hey, this is actually a quality show. And so that third season, it did win an Emmy for writing. And then after the third season, it starts getting more and more Emmys and picks up a couple more. And we'll talk about those accolades later. But after that third season and fourth season, once it's getting to be more mainstream, then the people start watching, and the 5th season hits. And once the 5th season hits, 10 million more suddenly flock to watching this show. And it jumps up from like number 40 or 50 show on the Nielsen ratings to number 3 or 4, just like from one season to the next. And after that, it stayed as a top 10 show for the rest of its run for the final 4 seasons.
It's interesting you say that was season 5, because doing the math, that would have been right before Friends started, which is clearly, like, you talk about the number 1 and 2 shows that in the 90s, it's Seinfeld and Friends. So I think it's safe to say that Seinfeld definitely had an influence on Friends for sure.
Yeah, exactly. The New York setting, because New York was like very near and dear, obviously, to both Jerry and Larry, and they had a lot of friends in that community. They had, and like, it's been typical now, and like it can be degrading to say like the Jewish sense of humor, but there was a huge Jewish comedic group in New York that was bustling for decades, and that Seinfeld was like a love letter to that. It was like standing on the shoulders of these giants and just taking their humor and like making it mainstream. And so that's where it really confused the producers once that pilot episode aired, because they thought it wasn't marketable for a broader audience. They thought it was very specific to the New York circuit. And when they saw that people across the country liked it more than they anticipated, that's when like, okay, maybe we need to order some more shows.
Well, yeah, because from the episodes that I watched, yeah, it was set in New York, but like I said, the day to day stuff, waiting in line in a Chinese restaurant or trying to find your car in the parking lot, these are all mundane things that are unique to New York.
Yeah, and so when you're talking about how Friends was influenced, well, there's plenty of stuff we'll talk about for influence, but we
Yeah.
brought it up with Friends is that they also had it's not that same observational relatable humor of like, let me spell this out for you the way that kind of Seinfeld does with its bookends of the comedic sets that he does,
Mhm.
but it is like I I lived that. I was a 20 to 30-year-old once. I remember what it was like to have my friends and to have them just come on over and we hang out and we go hang out at this place together and we get up to some of these ridiculous things
Mhm.
together. And like, sure, there was some more exaggerated stuff that happens in Friends, but it was all very familiar.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't quite that same observational comedy in the way Seinfeld did it,
Yeah.
but it was very relatable, mundane things that got blown into a ridiculous plot
Yeah.
line.
They have that in common. The thing with Friends is though, okay, I won't spend a ton of time on Friends because I know some people are like, stop talking about Friends. This is Seinfeld, but Friends was more of a relationship and character development show where like,
Yeah,
especially like Rachel season 1, Rachel season 2 are very different characters, and we get to see their journeys. Whereas like George season 1, George season 9, he's the same guy, and
yes,
they do have relationship stuff, but that's not the focus of the show.
exactly. And the whole point of them still being the same in the ninth season is exactly what Larry David set out to at the beginning of it. Like, these emotionally stunted people, and he's trying to hit on this idea of like, to point out the worst about humanity in a way of like, do we ever really change? Do we ever really get out of these biases that we have and us overreacting to the smallest, stupidest things? And like,
Yeah.
some of the stuff that the reasons that Jerry breaks up with a girl or why Elaine doesn't call a guy back are some of the dumbest things in the world.
Oh yeah,
Like, oh, she has man hands. I can't call her again. She's got man hands. Like, that I think spoke to plenty of people, plenty of women who've been broken up with for such stupid reasons. Like, what's wrong with me? And then like, oh, you've got man hands. What does that even mean? And so it's able to like mock that side of us and hold up a mirror to us and then mock it. And so that's why they couldn't grow, is because we needed people to
yeah.
make fun of.
I think it also speaks to the mindset of Larry David because I mean, I think anybody you look at me like, okay, me at 20 versus me at 30, very different. I think anybody would say that, but Larry David, is he the one guy who's like, no, I'm never changing? It's
And I'm sure he is. I haven't seen a lot of Larry David stuff. I haven't watched a single episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm, so I apologize if there's any Curb fans. But
I
I've
haven't
seen a
either. I've
few.
heard good things.
Yeah, I've seen a few episodes. Or I'm sorry, I've seen a few like interview stuff with Larry David, and I've seen his comedians in cars getting coffee thing with Jerry, and I'm just like, yeah, this is like a 90-year-old man child. I mean, just because he looks like Bernie Sanders doesn't mean he's not an angry, crotchety old man. Maybe that's how you view Bernie Sanders too. I don't know.
Yes and no, but I'm not going to talk about Bernie Sanders now.
What?
But like Larry David, we can't discount. He was very good at what he's made 2 very successful TV shows. I don't think that I would like to hang out with him.
No, not at all.
And I
But
think he's made a career out of seeming unlikable.
yeah, yeah, and that's where Lewis. See, we brought up Lewis Black earlier. I feel like I'd actually enjoy Lewis Black. I know he's angry, but that's also a shtick. And so, like, I think I'd enjoy spending time with Lewis Black because I do like his mock anger stuff. That's so funny.
I feel like Lewis Black. For a second, I thought you were going to say Louis C.K., which is very different. Lewis Black, I feel like would be super chill off the clock, and he's like, "Oh, You need me to be angry? You giving me money? Okay. Oh, what's the deal with everything? Why is there different kinds of milk?
What's the deal with everything? Why is there different kinds of milk?
He
Asking the hard-hitting questions.
he has a shtick about milk.
He was a perfect cast of anger. I mean, there's for Inside Out. There's no one else that could do that better than he did. There's people who could do that role, but he is like the embodiment of anger. So that was a brilliant casting.
And how some people have like their dumb movie. Like, I know this is not a good movie. I'm not saying it's great, but I love it. And for me, it's Accepted.
I love Accepted too. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and Lewis Black is great in that movie. It's not a great movie, but I still love it.
That's not true. It is a great movie.
Okay. I think so, and you think so. I don't think the majority of people think so.
Also true. It had a lot of like stars before there were stars, like a young Justin Long. I mean, Justin Long was big enough at that time, but it had the guy who played the Penguin in Gotham. It had Blake Lively.
Yeah,
like she was on Gossip Girl at the times, but
Jonah Hill.
Jonah Hill, yeah, that was the other one. Jonah Hill before he really blew up, and then he shrunk down. Lost the weight. So good job.
Yeah.
Just never mind. All right, so let's go back to Seinfeld. Where as the show went on and it got more and more popular, then Jerry started getting more and more money. And Jerry Seinfeld was actually the first person to get $1 million per episode. No one had ever gotten a pay scale like that. And so Jerry was offered $1 million per episode for their final season. And so, we talked about Friends, and actually the Friends pay scale, eventually they all got, every single one of them would make $1 million per episode. But as much as that sounds like right now for Jerry, like the residuals he got afterwards, this guy could easily be a billionaire for comedy or could have come pretty close. Seinfeld itself, the rights, a couple years back when they went to Netflix and that was a big deal, they sold for $500 million for like a 6-year deal for Seinfeld. I think this next year is the last year of that contract for Seinfeld rights to be on Netflix.
Oh, wow.
So he made a ton.
So that was just for Jerry. Was the other three? Were they on the same level, or was it all different levels?
I'm sure it was all different levels. Yeah. Sadly, knowing how Hollywood pays, I'm sure Julia Louis-Dreyfus got the least.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't think they all made the same, especially because it's Seinfeld's name and his likeness. For sure, he's going to get the big credit. But I didn't look up what they offered everyone else.
Because I've heard that, like, on Big Bang Theory, it was Johnny Galecki, Jim Parsons, and Kaylee Cuoco. The big three got, like, the biggest tier. And then Howard and Raj were always on the same level. And then Bernadette and Amy were always on the same level.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to know. So I apologize I didn't look that up. But what I did, the reason why I brought up pay scale is because the network, NBC, wanted him to come back again. They wanted him to come back for a 10th season. And I've seen like 3 different things quoted about why he didn't come back. And the biggest one was that is confirmed is, he wanted to spend time with family. He wanted to get a family. He didn't have a wife. He didn't have kids. He didn't have time off. He didn't have vacations. And so he's like, I want to kind of get my life back. But they offered him $5 million per episode and he turned it down. He's like, no, I can't do another season of this. And his other thing that apparently he said was he referenced the Beatles, who toured for 9 years. And then he said, but then they stopped and they left people wanting more. And there's actually an episode where George goes out on a high note in meetings. And so Jerry knows all about, like, I want to leave the audience wanting more. 9 seasons is a fine time to leave. Yeah. I think a 10th season would have overstayed. So he pulls out for the 10th. And so they don't do a 10th. They finish with the 9th.
And it was interesting is that, of course, we think like, oh, you turn down, 5 million times like 22 or whatever episodes. It's an ungodly amount of money. But he's not coming from, I don't know. Okay, so anyone listening, I don't know what financial state you're at. That's personal. But I'm guessing that we're not at the point where like money is no object. Yeah. Whereas at that point, season 9, I'm sure Seinfeld even then could have just not worked a day in his life and been fine. So it's like, yes, that's life changing amount of money, but he was already at that level where he didn't need to think about money.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like you can put a couple million away in an savings account, that like a high yield savings account, and you can live off of just interest. I don't know if that's what I don't know what he does with his money. I mean, he obviously went in and created his own show, Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, and that went on to have some modest success. And
Yeah.
he's been touring still too. I'm sure he gets paid for plenty of his appearances. He's not hurting, guys. So
There's not a GoFundMe for Jerry Seinfeld.
there should be, you know. All right, but that brings us to then, because he didn't do another season, they get to the series finale. And what a series finale this was. So, Brian, why don't you talk about the series finale a little bit, then I'll hit you with some numbers.
Okay. So like I said, I just watched the series finale today. I liked it a lot. I've heard that there's some controversy. I like that they're able to have this like revolving door. Like look at the empire we made. Look at all the bring back like the soup Nazi and bring back all these old characters. And I love the note that the fat guy that started who was getting robbed was John Panette, the comedian, who was also.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever seen his stuff?
Uh-uh.
Basically, he passed away, but he was basically one of those heavy comedians, and his shtick is all about food. He talks about being at like a Vegas buffet. He's like, I'm at the prime rib counter, going, hit me again.
Speaking of, I know you have more to share about the finale,
Yeah.
and this is completely out of left field. I just wanted to share it because we're recording this in September, and we just had the TIFF debut of the documentary "This Is" or "I Like Me" about John Candy, and this episode's gonna be coming out after that documentary has come out. So I've watched the trailer for it, and I'm like, I started tearing up at the trailer, and I'm like, I'm not gonna make it through this movie. I miss John Candy. John Candy might be the celebrity death that I care the most about. I love Robin Williams; he's great, but I do think John Candy was the one that I'm like really the most sorrowful about. He just felt like your uncle or your dad, you know?
Oh yeah, for sure. I still think either Robin Williams or Matthew Perry's got to be it for me.
Yeah, and Robin Williams is great, and Matthew Perry was sad, but like Robin Williams is sad because he took his own life, but at the same time he had something affecting his brain chemistry, I think. So I mean, like mental illness sucks, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but obviously, Matthew Perry was in some pain too from just his drug abuse and then just what he was prescribed, and just poor situation for what he was prescribed.
Matt, how do I appropriately segue back into the Seinfeld finale?
So speaking of a fat guy, that was appropriate, right?
Yeah. So I mean, the whole thing is Jerry and George had sold a show called Seinfeld. You know, one of those. Hey, it's like real life to NBC, and they're like, you can take whoever you want on a private jet and go anywhere. So the four of them are going to Paris, and then the plane like almost goes down, so they have to go to. They're either in Boston, I think, and they see the big guy played by John Panette get robbed, and all of a sudden they get arrested because there's a good Samaritan law, meaning if you don't interfere, you get arrested, which is completely unenforceable. It's like a completely unenforceable law in real life. Like, how would that even work? And so they're all on trial, and they bring back character witnesses, which is like the big hitters of so many people coming back from old episodes. It's like, yeah, Jerry was, and of course they focus on Jerry, even though there's a little bit of George and Elaine and Kramer talk. Yeah, Jerry was awful when he didn't know how to order at my soup restaurant, or the library guy. He had an outstanding library book for 25 years. At that point, we don't call them delinquents anymore. We call them criminals. And for all of this, they end up getting arrested and basically saying you're all going to spend a year in prison. And it ends with them sitting in a jail cell arguing over a button placement, which I think is a callback to the first episode.
Yes, yeah, it's the opening like back and forth that Jerry had, like line for line too. The integrity of the button is that second one.
Yeah. And then, but aside from, there's an end tag about Jerry in prison doing stand up and everybody hating it, which is ironic because we're talking about how we were not huge fans of his comedy.
Yeah, and it's also funny too. Like the beginning of the episode as well was them lampshading, like because the producer, everyone was talking about the Seinfeld finale. Like the night before, Dharma and Greg, they have an episode where they're trying to have sex in public because they're not going to get caught since everyone is watching the Seinfeld finale. That's the whole point of the whole point of their episode, and so everyone's like tuning into this and they're all like, what's good? So they have all these like spoilers. They were like leaking stuff. This was before Lost was out and people will start doing that for a living. And so they're leaking all these things that could happen. So they keep like in the first like 10 minutes or whatever, they are toying with all these different ideas that they had leaked. Like, oh, it's going to be that plane crash. They said, oh, that they are going to move to California and start that show. Oh, the Elaine is on her phone because someone she loves is dying, or whatever.
Yeah.
Like all these different things that they had leaked to the press, and then come to find out, nope, they're getting arrested.
It wasn't there also a thing? Just watch the episode. Were they trying to make people think that Elaine and Jerry were going to be a thing?
Yeah, they're going to get married.
Yeah, because on the plane crash, she's like, Jerry, I've always, and then like she doesn't say it, and then later on he's like, I've always loved something else. Which, correct me, like, they never dated, did they? Through the show?
No, they did. I know for sure they had the casual relationship because they had this one episode in like the second season where they were talking about like the bedroom was in the background. They're like, what happens in there and signaling the bedroom won't in fact impact what happens here and them on the couch. And so they're like kind of doing it back and forth of like let's keep these separate. We can sleep together and it doesn't affect anything. That sort of stuff.
Because I'm guessing there were probably people watching it like, oh, they've got to get together. But like, this was not like a Sam and Diane will they won't they relationship.
Exactly. There's no growth. There's no good things happening for them. George had a fiance and they killed her because the actress couldn't really mesh with anyone else's comedic timing.
Oh, is that what happened? I've heard rumors like that.
Yeah, Jason Alexander really fought for like, please don't bring her back for more. Like we can't land on the same page with this stuff. And like, no, it's gonna be fine. And they bring her back, and then like they realize quickly into like, oh, he was right, and she's just not really nailing the cadence of this show. And so then they're like, well, we got to kill her. So
is she like on bad terms? Like, does she like hate that, or is it kind of like a?
I didn't hear it from her point of view, so I don't know.
That's interesting.
I mean, she's not some big actress, so I mean, you could be mad like I got killed off of this show before it even made it big.
Yeah. Speaking of, okay.
Refresh my memory with the finale, because I remembered.
Yeah.
I kind of had a couple memories with it, and my memories might be conflated because I know that they showed like a clip show before the finale.
Yeah, I saw that. I didn't watch that one though.
Did they include those clips during the episode too?
Some of them, yes. Like when they a lot of them. Not every person who came up. Some of them did show old clips. Like over their voiceover, like, yeah, when Jerry was doing this, then they showed clips of it,
like him mugging the woman and taking her bread, or the bubble boy.
Yep, they showed both of those.
Yep. Okay, so I couldn't remember if I was just kind of mixing those two in my mind, or if they actually did have them in the finale. So that's where my biggest complaint with the finale is I'm like, I get where they're going, but then it ends up being a clip show. And I know there's plenty of other content apart from that, but to end your show with a little bit of like a clip show,
I wouldn't call it a clip show because there's not a ton of clips. I'd say like your typical clip show is like you have like 30 seconds. Someone said, "Hey, remember when we did that?" And they showed a clip montage.
Yeah,
this is more like I'd say 90% of it is not a clip show.
Yeah. Yeah, we there's really good examples we can both think of. Both Friends with the soap opera interview and The Office with the banker audit. Like both of those are
Friends shows. Did like I think at least 3 of them. Like every couple of years they're like, let's do a new clip show.
Oh yeah. And then Community's like, we're gonna mock that. We're doing a clip show with clips you've never even seen before.
Yeah.
So it it completely makes sense with these characters and what they're going for. And I think the letdown is everyone always has expectations. You know, how much do you and I still hear about people's expectations for Lost and thinking that they're going to sit everyone down and just explain out all the answers instead of like the way that they did it? And people are like, I'm so disappointed with Lost. I'm like, well, your expectations are wrong. You did they closed out these characters, and that's what they cared about, and you didn't care as much about that. You liked the mystery.
Yeah, I'm not completely aligned with you, but I'm mostly aligned with you. There's some things I think they should have answered in that, but that's for another podcast that we already did.
That's for another podcast. That's in the past, but we haven't reached it yet, so we're gonna get transported back into the past. And then we have to stop the island from moving.
I think my nose is bleeding.
I got headaches. All right. You guys are like, talk about Seinfeld. That's what you're here for. But the Seinfeld finale, I remembered it like having such a big amount of numbers, and I thought it was like comparable to MASH, and it wasn't. It's actually the fourth highest at the time. It was the fourth highest watched finale. Now, MASH was obviously number one, but it didn't even hit Cheers levels or the finale of, believe it or not, The Fugitive. And so it was number 4 after those three. But it still had 76.3 million viewers, which was almost 60% of all households watching at TV at the time were watching the finale of Seinfeld.
Yeah.
And this was the first show that wasn't the Super Bowl where advertising costs $1 million per minute. So, I mean, it still was a big deal. 4th overall of all time. I just, for whatever reason, thought it was more than like MASH was, or just higher as MASH. But man, that MASH was an event.
Yeah. Well, remember when I think when my dad was on talking about 70s TV, he said there was like, was it you that said that? Like there was some issues with like the plumbing in New York City at the MASH finale because like everyone went to the bathroom at the same time and they flushed the toilets at the same time.
Those poor Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They never knew what hit them.
Yeah. And
what's that, dude? Raphael, get down!
Yeah, I mean, this is back when network TV, like, I don't think we're ever going to get finale numbers like that again because like everything's on streaming and everyone watches it at their convenience now.
Yeah, you're right.
But going to themes of like the most influential, I'm trying to think. So, what the closest predecessor to Seinfeld that I could think of, where it's like not about a family, it's about people living lives. The closest thing I could think of would have been Three's Company. Is there anything else you can think of, which is still not the same kind of show? It's just the closest approximation.
Yeah, I think it's so far away from this. You might be like, Matt, why are you even comparing the two? But I compared them earlier because of the postmodernism. But Monty Python's Flying Circus of just focusing on something and making it absurd. Like, that's what this show did. This show didn't care about relationships. It didn't care about friendships. It's not, hey, look at how good of buddies Seinfeld and George are. Like, you had no feeling of like that these people actually liked each other. They got together and they just talked about stuff and they reacted to things. And like, sure, you'd call them friends. No doubt, you'd call them friends. But they didn't really seem to enjoy each other's company. They just seemed to be there as lightning rods for commentary of the things that goes around them. And I mean, like, what better way to showcase that than in the finale where they're commenting on a guy getting robbed at gunpoint? Like, that's just who these guys are.
And when you started saying Monty Python, I had the same thought that you figured out. I was like, that's a sketch show. But with the episodic nature and of where you can't grow as like no character development, it kind of is like a sketch show hiding in a sitcom.
100%. And so then, like, the reason why this can be influential and why you look at it is that you can look at all these different shows. Like, like we brought up the rule that Larry David had, the no hugging, no learning. How many shows can we highlight that use that idea? Arrested Development, the whole idea is the double entendre of Arrested Development. All of these characters are stuck as who they are, and no matter what Michael does, he's also stuck. All of them are stuck in their own emotional immaturity, and there's fake learning that they have in the episodes. Like they'll lampoon it with their like, oh, here's some nice music, oh, he's learning his lesson, and then like the music like cuts out, like, oh wait, no, he didn't, he's still stupid. That the whole idea of Arrested Development is that these guys all suck. This family sucks. They're all bad people. And so you have that. I've got a lot of other ones that you can think of that are that same way.
I'm sure there are. I'm drawing a blank at the moment.
Stumped you. You probably haven't seen this. I've watched a couple episodes of it, and it was the same thing where it's like I can't get into it because I just want to root for people. You know,
Yeah.
I don't like. And so that was It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah. From what I've seen, yeah.
And they are very, like, I would say of all spiritual successors, It's Always Sunny is probably the biggest spiritual successor. Now there's more satire to It's Always Sunny, and it's less observational, but it really is like that. These are the worst parts of humanity manifested in these characters, and you watching them, how they bumble through the situations they're in. No one's growing, no one's learning. It's just them defaulting into a survival mode and just picking some of the worst choices that you can make as individuals, and we laugh because of the situations that they create for themselves.
Yeah. And you know, a specific episode of a show that kind of like goes along with what you're talking about, like the going back to status quo. So get your TV Guys bingo cards up because I'm going to talk about the Muppets. I recently watched and this is on YouTube if you want to watch it because it's the only place you can see it. The Muppets Tonight episode with Jason Alexander as the guest, and I believe this was during the run of Seinfeld. And the whole story of the episode is that Jason and Gonzo were old college buddies, and they had a musical they wanted to write and perform called Bats. They're making fun of Cats, the musical, and they're like, "Hey, you're on the Muppets Tonight. Let's put it on tonight." So then, at first they're all great, but then they're arguing because Jason Alexander wants it to make it like super artsy and special, and Gonzo just wants to make a bunch of special effects, and they're fighting, and eventually they have the character development. They're fighting, and then they come together like, all right, we're actually friends now. Well, let's put this together, and they put the show on, and then at the end, it goes back to them arguing because they're complimenting with each other. Like Jason's like, Gonzo, you're right. The special effects were great, and Gonzo's like, no, I was wrong. You were right. Your poetry was great, and they end with them literally arguing, but arguing about how the other person was great. It's actually really funny.
Oh, you and your Muppets.
Hey, this time it had the Seinfeld.
It was pertinent.
Connection.
It made sense.
It even had Mr. George.
You know, it's a show that we don't talk about that much that is like this too. Drew Carey Show.
Oh, I love the Drew Carey Show.
I don't remember as much about Drew Carey Show, but it does feel like the things that I remember, I didn't feel like there was too much growth. There was a little bit where Drew and what's her name?
Kate.
That they were dating on the show for a little bit, and
At
then
some
like
point, yeah,
there was some growth that they did outside of that. So you know, it violated that rule a little bit. But there was just a lot of like they were all doofy, moronic types that like just commented on things, and just like Drew's relationship with Mimi and their antagonistic back and forth. Like that's the exact sort of thing that we see out of Seinfeld.
Oh yeah, my favorite moment, and it's definitely a Seinfeld moment, is so Lewis and Oswald in the show, which are Diedrich Bader and Ryan Stiles. They're like, 10 years ago we started making minimum wage, and 10 years later they raised the minimum wage.
You could probably throw Community lumped in with this. It had its own feel. Community was its own thing, but there is a little bit of that, like the satire, you know.
Kind of, but Community also had a ton of character development.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, I mean, Jeff in season 1, Jeff in season 6 are very different.
True. All right, here's one that doesn't have as much. IT Crowd.
Oh, yeah. They were definitely an underrated show. Did you ever end up going back and watching that?
I did. I watched all of it.
Me too, and I don't know where to get it anymore because it used to be on YouTube, but you can't find full episodes there anymore. It used to be on Netflix. It's not on Netflix anymore. So I don't know where to see it anymore.
Yeah. I can't think of other ones. I thought I had some more, but also it's not just like shows that seemed like this too, but it maneuvered out of saying, hey, your show doesn't have to be a family friendly whatever. Oh, Curb Your Enthusiasm, that's another one, but we haven't seen any episodes of it. But like we've talked about how the family unit comedy show, like Everybody Loves Raymond, we don't see a lot of those anymore. No. And Seinfeld opened the door to have different types of shows than those. And so that's why when there became more opportunity for different kinds of shows, then we saw you look at the UK version of The Office and how they also had similar, like David Brent didn't grow at all. I mean, he ends up getting fired. There's still storylines and there's still plot development. Yeah. But there's a little bit of that feel of like these are unabashedly pretty crappy people outside of maybe Martin Freeman's character. And so, that inspires our American Office, and when we get mockumentaries here, then we just go crazy with that, and mockumentaries out the wazoo. So like Seinfeld opening the door for a different type of comedy than just your classic 4-camera sitcom show, that changed the landscape of comedic television as we knew it.
I was going to say that Seinfeld was like the first show where you put the actor's name and the comedian's name in the title, and it's like their vehicle. But then I remembered that the Cosby Show exists, and that's that too.
Yeah, but he certainly was one of them.
Yep. George Lopez, maybe he said Drew Carey Show, like all those.
Yes, absolutely. But then other things that influence us as well is there's a lasting impression in terms of references. Like to this day, people make these references. Like, for instance, they really highlighted the yada, yada, yada was an episode of Seinfeld. And I know that term has been around for a while, but Seinfeld was the one that put it into the mainstream. I don't feel like there's any sentence from Seinfeld that, like, exists today in the same way where it's like you don't attribute that to Seinfeld. Like, if someone says, no soup for you, sure, that's a reference, and that's a popular reference, but you can trace it back to Seinfeld. Yada, yada, yada is just kind of part of our vocabulary now.
Yeah, no soup, like you can't say no soup for you. That doesn't apply to anything but Seinfeld. Yada, yada, yada. You could use that in your daily life.
Exactly. But I have a lot of other like references, things that they did. There is the George Costanza, Serenity Now!
I know the reference. I don't remember. What was the context of that?
It was a sort of self-help, like, this is how I'm calming down. It's just shouting at the top of your lungs, Serenity Now, like just manifesting it. Obviously, it didn't work, but...
Yeah. And then, obviously, Festivus
from the episode The Strike, which apparently was a real, like, I don't think Festivus itself was a real holiday, but Larry David, like, his dad created his own holiday out of... some sort of strike that he went on. So that was based off of a reality.
Oh, yeah, I just realized if George is Larry, that means there's got to be a real Frank Costanza. I would love to see anything about that guy.
No, you don't. You don't want to see that.
Maybe I don't.
I pulled some of the, like, so I referenced the man hands thing, but there's like a couple of these other, like, they're not as popular in the zeitgeist, but I've heard people bring them up. Like the Close Talker, Judge Reinhold when he was dating Elaine, and he'd just like get right in your face and like talk to them like nose to nose. Or the male bimbo. You're a mimbo, male bimbo. Do you remember the Elaine dance, like the full body?
Oh yeah. And has there ever been a fictional character since Carlton that had a signature dance besides Elaine?
Napoleon Dynamite.
Okay, good point. But that was way later.
It was way later. It was like, Wednesday Addams. So you've got that across history, but that is a very specific, like, if Fortnite can take it as an emoji and use it and then have to pay rights to it, you've done something iconic.
Yeah.
There was also the episode that it was, I don't know if this term existed before the episode, but this might be the only other one besides Yada Yada that we use, but the term double dip. So there's the episode when George is at like this buffet line and he dips a chip and then he does the double dip and someone catches him on it. It's like, that's like putting your whole mouth in the dip. And so that was made, either came from Seinfeld or was made more mainstream because of that episode.
I actually have a real life double dip story.
Oh no. So, I don't know if I want to hear it. I'm scared.
Okay. This applies to like a breadstick, because there was a work thing. There's a Pizza Hut, and the pizza breadsticks. But you think about it, there's two ends of it. You can dip this end, and then you can dip the other end. You're not double dipping. But I went one further. I said, break it in half. Now you have four ends that you can dip without double dipping. And whoever I was saying that to, they're like, no. They're like, completely shut it down. I'm like, but there's plenty of room. You're not double dipping. There's four ends. 4 distinct ends. There's enough space in the middle that when I dip this end and bite it, my mouth did not touch this end at all.
They didn't trust you, Brian.
No.
They thought they caught you in a lie.
No.
But hey, no, that's genius. Guys, if you, obviously Brian cares a lot about how you need to consume breadsticks. And so you can learn from this master. He has a ratio for sauce to stick, and that has to be met, or else what are we even doing here?
Exactly. I'm here to educate the people.
I'm giving up of my time. And then there's one other term that definitely comes back to Seinfeld, but it was referenced in Arrested Development once. That term is shrinkage.
Oh yes.
I was in the pool. I don't know if I do a good George. I don't think I do. My throat's a little sore anyway.
That's decent. I'm getting over a cold as well.
Look at that. Look, you and me moving on, leaving our exes in the past.
Our exes are cold?
Yeah. I mean, right?
Sure.
Thanks, bud. Any other popular references before we talk about some of the bigger episodes?
Well, there is, and you can insert all of the references that people listening who are big Seinfeld fans who are knowing that we're missing. Those ones. There's that one.
Oh yeah, that. When you said insert, I'm like, are you going to give yourself more editing? Because you love doing that.
No, not this time.
We are going to have a collection of all the different things that we've referenced from Seinfeld over the years. Brian's going to painstakingly find every single reference we've made, and he's going to put it in right now. And then the Price is Right theme. Bum, 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 bum. That's my favorite. Like, if I could have that like on a sound effect primed and ready to go on a button, every time someone would tell a joke and it would just fail, that's the perfect, like, let's just put that one in there. I love that little, like, you failed the game song.
I would use the noise of the that one.
See, that's a classic, but I feel like the Price is Right one is just more niche,
yeah,
and just more. I feel like it's funnier. I think that it works better to me.
It does, and the fact that it's like the tune is off, but that's the point of it, really works.
It's like they were gonna do the song and then they like couldn't. Little Engine that could. Bum 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 bum.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good impression. I was thinking, like, am I going to try to do it? But I don't know if I could. So you saved. I did the womp womp, and you did that one.
I did that song last week where I was able to get it. And you're like, no, Survivor Pearl Island.
That's true. Well, no, I did it horribly, and you're like, oh, hold on a second. We can do better. By we, I mean me.
We can rebuild it. All right. So we talked about big references that impacted culture, but there are also like some big episodes as well
Yeah.
that just people think of when they think about Seinfeld. Like, gotta include this episode. And one of the big ones, obviously we talked about the finale, but one of the other big ones, it's not a finale, is the Soup Nazi episode. And especially because the Soup Nazi was a real person in New York.
It was?
Yeah. They showed a clip too after that episode had aired. And the Soup Nazi, like the real guy, was so mad at Seinfeld because it's like, oh, it put me in such a terrible light. And then, but someone's in there with the camera and they're like, oh, can I get some bread with mine? He goes, it would be $2. It's just like, that's the exact line from the show. It was the exact pricing too. Like, do you really hate it if you're actually going to still stick to what $2 for bread?
That's so cartoony to know that's a real guy. Also, I thought that was a recurring character. I thought, besides just the one episode and then the finale, I thought he was like the Gunther of Seinfeld. But no, it's just the one episode.
No, he made that big of an impression.
This show didn't have a ton of recurring characters, I don't think.
And it's not like he had a bunch of lines either. It was like,
no.
He had a couple, but he's like, no soup for you, the catchphrase. It was the 90s. Everyone loved catchphrases.
Oh,
right? Yeah. And so he just gets propelled because no soup for you is just a great line. And especially with his accent and his angry demeanor. And the name Soup Nazi is a great name.
Yeah. And
that's the only time we're going to say pro to anything Nazi. That's it. Soup Nazi, that's it. That's the list.
Yeah. I'll co-sign that. And, but like, talking about this, they could have easily made that a recurring character like I thought it was. But the fact that even though it's so popular, one and done, I think it's a very Larry David thing to do.
100%. Like, Larry seems like the type of person, because there's a certain personality where you're like, hey, you do this. And like, well, because you told me to do it, I'm not doing it. And Larry feels 100% like that personality.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, so one of the episodes that almost made Larry David quit was one of their popular episodes as well. And that was the contest. Now, this episode was one where they all abstained from, let's call it self-pleasure. And because they never used the M word. Like, we can't use that on broadcast television, but we want it to be clear that's what we're talking about. And Larry, when he wrote this episode, he's like, I love this, but they're going to hate it, the producers, and the network's not going to let me run it. So he's like, he brought it in. He said, this is the episode we're doing. If you change one thing about it, I walk. I leave this show. And thankfully, they loved it and they ran it as is. And guess what? Larry David won an Emmy for writing for that episode.
For that episode, I watched it. It was an interesting episode, but I don't know if I would call it Emmy worthy. That's
yep, that was it.
And that's a ballsy move because you hear, again, I'm addicted to all these rewatch podcasts, and some of these shows get so bogged down with like network censors doing every little thing. But I guess like Seinfeld is not going to be under the same scrutiny as Full House because of the audience they're going to.
Yeah, but they still knew they obviously had their limitations. So it's like, well, we can't use that word. So let's just like how you and I aren't going to use that word. Because, we're good little Christian boys that would never do anything wrong.
Yep.
We talked about the strike as one of the big episodes. Okay, here's one that we haven't mentioned that you and I were talking about a little bit beforehand, and that's Junior Mint. And I love that moment because Kramer, he likes the ER room, like the operating theater, and he treats it like an actual theater. And so like, when they're toying with this idea of like, oh, he's going to bring a snack and some sort of concessions in the ER room, like, oh, maybe he'll have popcorn. Like, no, that's too generic. We need to go with a certain candy. And someone said something like for a candy, and then another person's like, no, Junior Mints. Junior Mints is funnier. He's like, yeah, Junior Mints is funnier. And that wasn't a product placement. Like, a lot of these, they've had a lot of references to candy. Like, just because the way that it sounds, and like that's what makes it funny. I don't care about a product placement. We're not going to get paid for it. So he's eating Junior Mints in the operating theater, and he's next to Jerry. And so I can't remember exactly what it was, but he somehow drops Junior Mint, and they both watch it fall in slow motion into the open body, getting surgery down below.
Which I commented to Matt. I think even in the 90s, they would have a glass partition at least, if not have it be a separate room.
Yeah, semantics.
Because, I mean, super realistic shows like Grey's Anatomy that have nothing exaggerated at all, at least have it separate, you know.
Let's pull a. It's still exaggerated, but it's more. This was really the big breakthrough concept episode because, and this was in the second season, but you mentioned it earlier as the Chinese restaurant episode. And this was the one that really struck a chord with watchers because we've all been waiting. Like this episode, this was a Kramerless episode, by the way. So it's Jerry, Elaine, and George. They're all waiting at the waiter, the hostess stand. They're waiting for a table at this Chinese restaurant. They're out to eat. They're ready to get their food, and it's just taking forever. And like, what is going on with this? And everyone has been in that situation where you're like, you're here for dinner. Wait, why is it taking so long to get my table? And they keep going up to, what's his name? James Wong? Is that who's the?
I think so.
They kept, and he's the guest star, like that guy who's been in so much. He was the voice of Poe's dad in Kung Fu Panda. Hong, I think it's James Hong, actually.
Yeah. Actually, Hong, I think you're right.
Yeah, James Hong. And so he's the host there, and he just keeps giving him the 5 to 10 minutes. You said that 5 to 10 minutes ago. When is my table ready? And so it was just such a relatable episode that people are like, okay, now I get this concept.
It might not be a full half hour, but we've had definitely experiences similar to that.
Yep.
So, Matt, I as you're talking, I have a memory that came into my head, and I'll share this story that could be, it's something that actually happened to me when I was 15 that could have been like a sitcom episode, sort of akin to Seinfeld. And I'm wondering if you have one similar to this as well. So I remember I was 15 because we went to see Freaky Friday in the theaters, and it was me and my sister, our previous guest, Alex, who was on for a Squid Game episode, and my cousin. There's 4 of us. And early on in the movie, there was a scene where someone shakes the table and the grandpa goes, "Earthquake!" And he runs out of the house. It's kind of a funny moment. And then later on, at the end of the movie, it's like the cheesy, like they're having their heart-to-heart moment. The music is swelling up and they're talking, like Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan are talking to each other. And I forget which of us started it, but someone leaned over and whispered, "Earthquake!" And they went down the line, and we are just bursting, trying not to laugh. Where you was like, like everybody around us is like annoyed with us, and we just cannot contain ourselves laughing during the big heart-to-heart moment, right? So then the credits start to play, and there's like some bloopers in the credits. We're like, okay, we're leaving. We're gonna get out of here so that people don't yell at us. And so we're like, we get out to the car. The car doesn't start. I forget whose car it was. But it must have been summer, so we had like lawn chairs in the back seats. We literally set up lawn chairs in the parking lot and waited for my dad to come pick us up because whoever's car we had wouldn't start.
Oh no!
I feel like I'm describing what could be a sitcom episode, but that actually happened to us in real life.
Well, along with the car not starting, there was the episode when the whole episode is them looking for their car after like
I watched that one too. Yeah.
And then they get to the car finally at the end of the episode. They finally remembered where they parked. They found their car. They get in it, and it doesn't start. And that was not in the script. That was an accident. And the car not starting was like, that works perfectly. Why didn't we think of that? We're keeping it.
Mm. That one too. But that one, there's a moment where they're asking strangers, "Can you drive me around the parking lot to try to find my car?" Like, how big is this parking ramp? Just start at one end and walk through it. I feel like that would be quicker than walking in circles.
You have never been in a parking ramp, man. Obviously you have. You've been in plenty of parking ramps.
Yeah, I definitely have.
You've lived in the cities. You are a friend to the parking ramp.
I worked at the Mall of America for almost a decade. So yeah.
Oh, there's another episode. The last one I'll mention because there's an item of this that was donated to the Smithsonian, and that is the puffy shirt, and which is where my name here comes from that I have on our StreamYard one. The Jerry's I don't want to be a pirate. Because he couldn't hear right over the phone when he was talking about this interview for being on TV, and the person was asking about this shirt that he was going to wear, and comes to find out it's like this puffy like pirate type shirt, so he has to wear this really crappy shirt. And he has this, I don't want to be a pirate. But that shirt itself got donated to the Smithsonian, and I don't think it's on display right now, but they have it in their archives.
Yeah, again, it's like the shirt is more iconic than the actual episode, kind of like Festivus with the strike.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think iconic with the show also is just like Jerry's nasally voice, like hey, what's the deal? Like the people do that kind of impression all the time, and
that's a great caricature Jerry Seinfeld voice. Love it.
Oh, thank you. What's the deal with the nasally voice? And people, and he has the whiny tone. And when he's yelling, he goes like this. And like, he's such a very easily impressionable character.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And like, whereas all the other ones, so everyone kind of has their own thing, except for as unfortunate as it sounds, like Elaine just ends up being like, because she's the woman, like that's what makes her stand out. Like George is like Larry, like that curmudgeon-y, like this dude is so full of vitriol. He's like, no one would ever like this guy in real life, but obviously that's not true because Larry has friends. Kramer has his entrances and he has his zany wackiness. Jerry stands out because of his ridiculous voice, and then Elaine, like again, unfortunately she's the woman, and that's really what makes her stand out.
I love the episode where Jerry lives at Kramer's for a little while, and then he like comes in and he's like turns into Kramer. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, the roasted chicken roaster.
The chicken roaster, yeah.
With where they put the Kenny's Roasters logo outside the window.
You can tell they either Jerry or Larry had the idea. Okay, Jerry's going to do an impression of Kramer. Let's build an episode around that. It had to be how they did that.
Yeah. Exactly. Here, let's talk about the accolades for this show, because we're going to come back to Chicken Roaster in 1 second. Because this show, it's had a number of accolades, but the ones I want to talk about, because they're the ones that are the most important, are the Emmys.
Yeah.
And they won 7 competitive Emmys. They had some Emmys for creative arts as well. I think they had like 2 or 3 of them, but that I didn't write down, that are a lot more specific. But the 7 ones that are like the big competitive ones, they won for writing twice. So we talked about Larry David, he won once. But then there was another episode in the 3rd season that won that wasn't written by Larry David. So you can imagine maybe how annoyed he would be, as like the first Emmy that Seinfeld wins, he's not attached to. But then the 4th season, is the only time it won for the best comedy overall. So it wins for the 4th season of Seinfeld. Julia Louis-Dreyfus wins 1 Emmy for episode Soup Nazi. There's another episode she won it as well. It was like a dual one, Soup Nazi and this one, but Soup Nazi is the big name episode. But then Michael Richards wins 3 Emmys for this show. So 3 out of the 7 Emmys that Seinfeld wins all go to Michael Richards. 1 for Junior Mint, and then 1 for, I didn't have this written down because I didn't recognize the episode off the top of my head, and then the other one for Chicken Roaster that we just had talked about,
which was a really good one. Interesting that Michael Richards won it when like the standout moment is Jerry Seinfeld's doing Michael Richards.
Yeah, but I mean Michael Richards ends up doing more Jerry, so it's Jerry did a really good job in that, but I mean Michael Richards, he was just electric.
He really was. Is he still under controversy? Because I know for a while he was like a red-listed comedian. It
sounded like he kind of had this comeback tour a little bit, and then still said something else, or like just he didn't quite get on the other side of this with his comeback tour. I don't know. I didn't follow it a whole lot. Obviously, we're not. I'm not going to comment on it because
me either. I may cut this part.
You don't say things like that. I don't care about comedy. You don't. I mean, I do care about comedy. You just don't say things like that.
Well, it got all the way to the point where after that episode, South Park did a whole episode about Stan's dad being labeled a N-word guy because he was on Wheel of Fortune, and the word was N blank GGERS. It was people who annoy you, and he's like, I know it, but I shouldn't say it. Like, say it, and he says it, and then no, the word was naggers, people who nag you, and then in the episode they actually had Michael Richards welcoming him into the club of the N-word guys.
Well, South Park doesn't like Jerry too much, or Jerry doesn't like South Park too much because
Oh, really?
Jerry went on the show and he ends up being just like a turkey and just goes gobble 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 or whatever. Like that's the most that he does. And it's like, why am I on this show? Why are you hiring me? I'm Jerry Seinfeld.
That's hilarious.
So yeah, and that's the whole point. They're like, all right, we don't care. We're gonna make you just a turkey. And like they paid all this money for him to give turkey noises.
Did Jerry Seinfeld ever do like movies?
Yeah, B movie.
Just is that the only one?
I think he's done other ones, but I don't remember what else he's done. But I mean, that's like the big one everyone talks about.
Yeah, and like Jason Alexander is one you see coming up all over the place.
Yeah, he didn't really do a whole lot because he's not like an actor, you know.
Yeah,
so he didn't do like a whole lot of acting movies.
And now you see Julia Louis-Dreyfus a lot, and you still see Jason Alexander a lot.
Yes, yeah, they're actors. They for sure will do those. Yeah, just looking at everything, all of his like movies are like comedy special, you know.
Yeah.
Although he started on Benson in the 70s.
Okay.
In a small role. Final accolade here. TV Guide in 2002 called Seinfeld the greatest TV show of all time. And I do not think that is warranted. But, you know, who are we to say? Well, once we have a show that runs for 9 seasons, we can throw stones.
It's definitely in the ballpark. So I have a cousin, actually. So our previous guest, and you know my cousin Tammy, her brother Matthew is he's cool, but he's also very much a hipster. Yeah. And at one point, I was saying, and he mentioned that how much better he thought Seinfeld was than Friends, and my thought was, yep, you are the exact kind of person who would think that. And not that I necessarily disagree, but you talk to him for 5 minutes. Okay, he's a Seinfeld guy.
I mean, you're right that it is a very specific type of person. Not to cast aspersions, but there definitely is a specific type of person.
Yeah.
There was this Data is Beautiful graphic that this is based on this guy polling his Instagram followers of like per state. Never mind, I thought it was more official than it was, but like he found for Georgia and Alabama, Mississippi, it is Mississippi, that they were the two that had the most people rewatching Seinfeld. Lots of people watch The Office, plenty of people watch Friends and Parks and Rec, but they had the most Seinfeld watchers from those 2 states.
I may go back and watch Seinfeld. So like Seinfeld has been one of those shows that like, you know what? I should go through and watch the whole thing. And I've been saying that for years and I haven't done it. So maybe this will be the catalyst that'll get me to watch Seinfeld.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe you'll find the come around. Oh, here we go. Here's what is this? Variety had one. Which are the ones? Oh, for like what people watch the most. Oh, this is such a small picture for during COVID. And I'm looking to see, is there any Seinfeld? There's a lot of Friends. Weirdly enough, Washington and Oregon, Star Trek. That's what they're streaming during COVID.
I've seen a graphic that was like state by state. What are they? And it was like a lot of Friends, a lot of The Office, a lot of Seinfeld, and like a couple like Parks and Rec and Brooklyn Nine-Nine were in there.
Yeah, there's some shows I was not expecting, like Grey's Anatomy. No, not Grey's Anatomy. Gilmore Girls. Actually, there's a Grey's Anatomy. Some states that Vampire Diaries up in Montana. Okay, cool. Ozark in Missouri. Like, I can't go outside, so I'm gonna watch people outside in the Ozarks where I could be, but I'm not.
I was recently listening to a podcast, and they said the sentence, "This guy is the Taylor Dosey of Fraggle Rock," and my thought was, "This is my kind of nerd."
My wife is rewatching because it's fall, and if there's a show that has fall feel, it's Gilmore Girls.
It
So my
really
wife is
does.
watching through that. Well, that's about all that I have for Seinfeld. It's like we don't talk about this a ton because it's not that show that's like I love it so much. But it was one that had some good humor. It had some good episodes. There was some really funny stuff. Oh, okay. Let me tell you about my favorite episode of Seinfeld real quick.
Okay.
It's the episode where, there's always like 3 different gag lines going in an episode.
Yeah.
And so to me, the one where Putty is a Christian is the funniest episode of all time to me, because in that episode we have Putty and Elaine's relationship. Elaine finds on all of his radio stations he has like tuned to Christian radio stations. She's like, what's going on? Why he's a Christian? Are you kidding? And so then he just really plays up like you're going to hell sort of angle. She's like, if I'm going to hell, you should care that I'm going to hell. And so then they go into like counseling at the end of the episode with the priest. And the priest's like, oh, you guys are living together and you're not married? Like, yeah. Oh, in that case, you're both going to hell. And so she's finally relieved because now Putty's in the same boat. But Putty's then they're like making comments and jokes back and forth. And Putty's like, please, I'm not in the mood. I just found out I'm going to hell. Oh. And he's like, don't worry, it'll only feel like an eternity. And then they're like laughing back and forth. But in that same episode, that's also one where Kramer is acting out symptoms from medical school patients. I actually think Daniel Day Kim, or not Daniel Day Kim. Who plays Jin? What's his name?
You're right, Daniel Day Kim.
It is Daniel Day Kim. Okay, because my head went to Daniel Day Lewis. I'm like, no, that's definitely not him. Daniel Day Kim. I believe he's actually in that episode too, as just one of the medical students. But then the symptom that he has to act out is gonorrhea. And so he just walks into the apartment and just like, they gave me gonorrhea. Just no context. Like, what? And so then he like puts, he does really, he tells like this story about like this woman and this woman that like he was in love with. And like, my heart was inflamed as my genitals were soon to be, or something like that. And like, gonorrhea is like, you got it. And so like, when he keeps coming back, they keep giving him gonorrhea because he did so well with it and just went outside the box in how he portrayed that disease. And so then he tries to switch with someone else, and he comes in like with their jaundice that they have and trying to do something else. And then that was also the same episode where George would go to these meetings and he'd tell like a joke in the meeting and everyone would laugh, and then he'd do a follow-up joke and then that wasn't as funny. And Jerry's like, got to go out on top, leave him wanting more. So then he would tell a joke in the meeting, and as soon as he'd get the laugh, he'd be like, all right, that's it for me. And he'd stand up and leave the meeting. And so all 3 of those storylines in that episode were hilarious. The best episode, I can't remember which one it is to recommend.
That sounds really funny. Yeah, and I love when like you're invested in more than just one thing, because sometimes like you go to the B story, you're like, whatever.
Oh, it's the Burning, season 9, episode 16. So if you're like, I don't know, Seinfeld's for me, check out that episode at least. It's great.
Well, and one last thing, because the whole point of these episodes is say they're the most influential, and I mean, it's not the only show that had like the meeting. It's not the first show that had like the meeting place. Like Saved by the Bell had the Max, and they had the diner in Happy Days. But I mean, Seinfeld influenced Friends, which influenced How I Met Your Mother, and it definitely was its own mini genre that defined sitcoms for a while afterwards. I mean, even now, probably.
Yeah, and if they knew it was going to be a hit, they would have built bigger sets. That was one thing. I can't remember who had said that, but someone was like, we didn't think it was going to be big, and so we built these tiny sets. And they're like, well, now we're stuck in these for all 9 seasons, and they're so small.
We're talking about like knowing it was going to be a big hit. I recently on a podcast. I listen to too many podcasts, but they're talking about how High School Musical with and the Disney Channel. They didn't know that was going to be a big deal, and so they were only contracted for one movie, so they had to like try to get everyone back for the second and third ones. Whereas now, for like Descendants and Zombies and all these big Disney Channel franchises, you're signed up for like 3-4 movies from the get go, because like if this is going to be a big hit, we have you.
Yeah, which fun, because then you have to drop other projects so you can do that.
Yes, but if it goes well, you're probably making a lot of money.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, no one's like, I'm doing Disney's Zombies, and then I'm going to go work on this Christopher Nolan picture. Like, no, there's not that same crossover.
No, not quite.
All right. Well, that is it for Seinfeld. So go check out some episodes still on Netflix, at least for the next 6 months or a year or something like that.
Something like that, and I'm sure it'll be somewhere else after that.
Yeah, it's too big of a franchise. It's too big of a TV show to go anywhere else. All right. Well, what was trivia last week, Brian?
We talked about Superstore. Are you asking me because you forgot?
No, I totally remember because it was about Superstore and Survivor.
It was, yes. I said who on Superstore is married to a Survivor contestant, and that is Nico Santos, who played Mateo on Superstore, is married to Zeke Smith, who was a contestant on seasons 33 and 34 of Survivor.
There you go. Seasons I haven't gotten to yet. Not yet.
Considering our next one is season 8.
Yes. All right. So in one of the episodes of Seinfeld called The Masseuse, Elaine is dating someone whose name is Joel Rifkin. Now, in the media at the time, Joel Rifkin was a mass murderer, and so they actually kind of play on that because she's dating a guy named Joel with the same name as a mass murderer, she is getting side eyes from a lot of people. And so part of the episode is her trying to get Joel to change his name. What does she insist, ironically enough, that Joel changes his name to?
No, my mind just goes to Joey being Joseph Stalin on Friends.
It's a similar caliber. I mean, it's actually not like a joke because, well, I'll tell you in trivia.
Yeah.
It ends up being a joke because of something that happens. But you'll find out next week.
All right.
Did I whet your appetite enough? Is your appetite whetted? Wet. All right.
I don't know what that was.
Sometimes you just got to go with it. You get the urge. You just got to roll.
You know what? Brian, you rolled with me being Rupert a few weeks ago, so I'll roll with you saying wet a bunch.
Like, at least it's not saying moist. Hey, Brian, what are we doing next week?
Next week, we are diving back into 90s nostalgia. For Halloween, we are going to be breaking down the episode, and then there was Sean of Boy Meets World, the Scream episode.
Break it down now.
The one that I had to beg my mom to let me watch when I was 10.
Your mom. I don't know what I'm joking about that. All right. Well, hey, make sure you're there for that. Enjoy your fall. Enjoy watching I Like Me with John Candy. And until next time, I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
And we're reminding you to stay tuned and keep watching.